Hello, guys. It's week 2 of the NFL season, almost week 3, and it is time for the tier list. This week, it is my turn to
Er,
present the NFL tiers. I know Drew's going to have a problem with at least one of my teams, but let's go.
I'm
The
excited. I'm
first,
excited. Let's go.
the first tier, we don't even really need to talk about this tier. Obviously, the Texans won't draft Caleb because they can't. They don't have their draft pick, but if they could, they might even consider it. But obviously, their draft pick, they don't have it because they traded it to get the top two picks last year when they ended up with number one and number two. But or number 2 and 3, excuse me. But the Cardinals, they would love Caleb. I think the Bears, the way Fields is playing, they would love Caleb. So that's the tier 10. 10 tiers this week. I've added a tier. Last week there
You
was
added it
9.
here. You feel like you needed to.
I felt like I needed to. It
Okay.
didn't work out. So tier 9. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I don't think I'm wrong about these teams. You'll see who I've got.
All right.
Packers at 29, the Falcons at
Whoa.
28, Tampa Bay 27, and then we've got the Washington Commanders at 26 and the Panthers at 25. Here's the deal, Drew. These 5 teams combined record of 7-3.
Yeah,
However, when
that's what
you
I'm
look at
saying.
when you look at the 7 teams that they've beaten, you know what their combined record is?
What?
1-13. So these 5 teams are playing a bunch of bad teams and winning early
Or they're
on,
good. Or they're good.
or they're good, but I don't think so. And here's the
There you
like
go.
there's only one team in the league who has lost to one of these teams and also won a game. And that team is the Packers who are in this tier. So there's just
Yeah.
there's like oh they beat the Bears and the Cardinals and Tampa Bay beat the Vikings who I have still ranked higher because I think they have more talent still. The Panthers are 0-2 and I still think they're going to end up being the best when it's all said and done. Uh, However, Bryce Young needs to figure it out. But here's what I think we can agree on, Drew. I think that there's a good chance that one of these 5 teams will end up being good when it's all said and done.
So
Would you
you so
would you agree?
you think you are wrong then about at
But
least one.
but what I'm saying is I don't think anybody knows which one is legit and which ones are pretenders because I'm watching
I mean, the
Colin
Bucks beat
Cowherd
the,
is
the
saying the
Bucks beat the Ra-
Commanders are a top 10.
you think do you think the Ravens are a bad team? Because that's kind of
None,
your argument
none of
here.
these people beat the Ravens.
The Bucks.
No, the Bucks beat the Vikings.
Oh, they beat the
The
Vikings.
other purple team. And the
Okay.
Ravens are
There you
higher.
go. All
But you
right. All
look at
right.
this.
All right.
So I think there's a decent shot that one of these teams ends up being legit, but I don't think anybody knows which one. So I'm gonna say they're
Yeah.
all bad until one of them shows me that they're good because I don't want to be wrong on multiple teams. So I'll take the loss if the Buccaneers somehow end up being 11-win team, which I don't think they will. But if they do, or the Falcons, I'll take that one loss. I think for the most part, these are still bad teams.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're great, but hey, the Falcons 2-0, Bucks 2-0, um I see some power rankings where they have the Falcons as high as like
Yeah,
13,
I've
Buccaneers
seen the
approaching
Packers
the
and
top 10.
Commanders both in the top 10.
The
So I mean,
Commanders the Commanders beat the Broncos. I think they're better than the Broncos, quite frankly. They're 2-0 and the Broncos are 0-2. I understand your more talent argument, but I don't think that's the case here. I think the Commanders have more talent than a team like the Broncos. Out of all these teams to maybe make a run into the playoffs, I think it's probably the Buccaneers. I think they have a great chance in their division. I think the South is really, really bad. And if you think the Saints are going to run away with that division, I think you're crazy because I think the Falcons and the Buccaneers are going to give the Saints maybe not just a run for their money. They might be favorites at this point.
I think you got to favor the Saints. I think that their defense is elite, but we'll see. I mean, yeah, I listened to a whole segment from Skip Bayless talking about Baker Mayfield as a potential MVP candidate. So there's people out there who
Yeah.
are on the Bucks, but
Hey, Baker's good. Have you seen
who
have you
are
seen
on
the
the
stats?
Falcons.
Have you seen the
Yeah,
stats
yeah, the stats
comparing
are
to
good.
Sean Watson to Baker Mayfield?
Well, this season Baker's much better.
Exactly. It's crazy. But just to think the NFC South has three 2-0 teams.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
but the Bucks play the Eagles this week, so they won't be undefeated after that.
unless they will be.
And the Falcons play the Lions. That'll be a really good game, I think.
Yeah, let's
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 go
move on
on.
next year. Yeah,
Tier 8 should be good, but won't be good. There's four teams in here. These teams on paper, they look like they should be good. But
better Broncos today.
because of the situation that they're in, they just won't be. You got the Colts, which really a lot of that just falls on rookie quarterback. You got the Chargers, who I think
Oh,
they need to fire their coach. They
oh
just need
man,
to.
oh man.
You've got the Patriots. Oh, by the way, the red means you've fallen a tier, so the Patriots have dropped into this tier.
Wow, look at you.
The Patriots, and then the Broncos, who have also fallen into this tier. These teams, I looked at them and then there's good players. Like the coaches, they have two of these teams have like elite Hall of Fame level coaches. Justin Herbert is an elite quarterback. Like you look at these teams, like how are they bad? But they won't be good because the Chargers are going to Charger, and the Patriots, Mac Jones can't carry them, and Denver is just I don't know what I think Denver is just cursed at this point.
I
So
agree with
yeah,
three of the four teams I agree with. Um, but the Chargers, they're 2 plays away from being 2-0 right now.
and
It's
but
just
they're not, and they're going to be 0-3 once
I
they lose to the
understand that, but they're,
Vikings.
they're 2 plays away from being 2-0 against a really good Dolphins team. If you don't have the Dolphins in the top 5, I don't know what we're doing here. And a team like who they play, the Titans, who a solid team. They've been good in the past. Really good coach. Tannehill knows what he's doing. He's a veteran. Gave him problems. Yes, that loss was a bad loss. I can agree with that. Maybe they shouldn't be in the top 10 right now. They're 0-2. I can understand that, but man, this is really low, especially below other 0-2 teams like the Patriots and the Broncos. That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me.
Well, I thought the Patriots gave the Dolphins more of a fight defensively than the Chargers did.
Sure, when
The
you
Chargers
bring
have no defense.
when you bring the caveat of defensively, sure.
The Chargers have no defense. They're not going anywhere this year. Let's
I
move
mean,
on.
Titans put up 27 in OT. I mean, it's not that bad of a showing.
The Titans, who couldn't score at all against the Saints. Tier 7, you get the QB highs and lows. These teams, their quarterbacks, one week they're going to give you the game of their life. The next week they're going to give you the worst game of their life. We got the New York Giants. What Daniel Jones, that was incredible in the second half against the Cardinals, but he's played 1 out of 4 good halves and 3 out of 4 terrible halves. But still, he's got his team competitive. You got the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill was the #1 worst quarterback in week 1, and he threw 3 picks. Week 2, he's a top 5 quarterback in the league, and he's leading his team to overtime win against the Chargers. Then you got the Jets. Obviously week 1, Aaron Rodgers, who probably was high, and then you got Zach Wilson, who might be the worst possible quarterback for them to have. So it's just highs and lows for these teams. I think they're all going to be pretty average. The Jets are probably going to continue drop. You see, the Jets they fell into this tier, and my guess is that they probably will keep falling as the season goes on.
Yeah, I like the name highs and lows for 2 of the 3 teams here, but I don't see the highs for Zach Wilson. I really
Well,
don't.
the high was the first game when they beat the Bills. But if
Yeah.
there's no
I
more
don't know if
highs,
did he throw for 200 yards that game? Like I don't know. Like
well, he did lead them to a win when
okay,
Aaron Rodgers went down.
punt return when, either way. And I think if you have the Giants above the Chargers, wow, that is
I
crazy.
I do I think the Giants actually have a
They,
win,
they
so
lost by like
that's
40 against the Cowboys, and then they beat the worst team in the league, which you said it yourself. It's the
that's
worst team in
true.
the league
That's true. I do agree they're the
by
worst team in the
3 points.
league,
They were
but they
this
have
close.
a
They were
win.
this close to being 0-2 right now against the Cardinals and the Cowboys.
Yeah, if the Giants had lost to the Cardinals, I would have probably dropped them all the way down to like there or like here. I would have put them on this tier, but they didn't. They cleaned it up. So that's what they're doing. All right. Tier 6, missing pieces. These teams, I see evidence that these teams are good, but they're missing some pieces. You've got the Vikings. They just tried to make a trade to fill one of their missing pieces because they have no run game at all. So they just traded for Cam Akers. We'll see if that works. You got the Dolphins. I know you're gonna hate this. The Dolphins are in my missing
Wow.
pieces.
Wow. That's crazy.
What's the missing piece, Levi? What is it? Tell us what the missing piece is. The missing piece is consistency. We saw the Dolphins last
Consistency. They're
season.
2-0.
Last season, the Dolphins were 8-3, and then what happened? They lost five straight, and they barely
It's a
made the
different team.
playoffs.
It's a different team.
And this is not. It's not a different team. It's the same
Team.
exact team,
It's a different
except
team.
the
Two is a
defense
year
is the
older.
same.
Two is a year older.
And I still don't trust the coach or Tua's health. So the Dolphins, I mean, I'll tell you what they can do. If they beat the Bills in Week 4, then they will prove it to me. But
Wow, this is crazy.
I think the Dolphins are a 9, maybe 10 win team.
The Giants are two teams below this.
They're actually 1, 2, 3. They're three teams below, but
Whatever. That's crazy. The Raiders above. Oh,
and then we've got the Raiders. The Raiders, who I initially had as a playoff team. But they lost a pretty ugly game to the Bills, so they slip out of the playoffs. What's their missing piece? Their missing piece is again same as the Dolphins and the Vikings. Honestly, they have no defense, and the Raiders also. Josh Jacobs has been nowhere to be seen this year. What happened to him? I don't know, but they got to get him going. I still
well,
think the
and
Raiders.
Garoppolo. I think that's the big thing
Yeah, well,
that's
Garoppolo had a
holding
good
it.
game against the Broncos, but
One
he did
touchdown, two
not.
interceptions
Yeah, he
versus.
was bad against Buffalo. So that's tier 6. Then we got tier 5
I haven't said my
defense.
piece about tier six here.
Okay. Go back. Go back.
All right. I actually really like two of the three teams here. I'd be with you on this. But folks, if you saw my power rankings last week, I had the Dolphins
And
in the,
and everyone has them in the top 5 at this point, except for
I have
me.
Dolphins as the first place AFC team on my power rankings. I have them second place behind the Chiefs to make the Super Bowl in my mind. They're a really good team. Super, super solid. They have a good defense. They have elite wide receivers. They have Tua Tagovailoa, who's slinging the ball right now. They're 2-0.
Who
I
have they
don't
beat? They beat the 0
I
and
don't
2 Patriots and the 0 and 2 Chargers. I don't know. I
they're good.
haven't.
Those are not bad teams at all. Those are not bad
Well, but
teams.
they're both
The
ranked
Chargers,
lower.
the Chargers are an above average team, and the Patriots are just slightly below average.
Beat a
Those are
team
two.
that's ranked above you, and that's how you go up in the
The
rankings.
Raiders are 1-1, and they're ahead of this team. And also, the fact that the Dolphins have a green box around this is asinine.
Because they
That is
moved up
that is
last week.
crazy.
They
That is
I
crazy. They somehow moved up, and they're
they,
in tier six.
well, if my initially I didn't even have them in my top 20. So now they're up to 16 and they can keep going up if they keep winning. That's how it works. All right. Tier 5. Defense wins wild cards.
Ooh,
These
interesting.
teams have elite defenses, maybe the four best defenses in the league besides the Cowboys and 49ers. But in today's day and age, none of these teams are getting any further than a wild card. We've got the Saints, we've got the Steelers moving up after their win. We've got the Ravens moving up. And we got the Browns, who I still believe in despite the ugly loss. I think if they can just clean up the turnovers, the Browns win that game if Deshaun Watson doesn't throw a pick six in the first play of the game. So I think all four of these teams can make wild cards with on the backs of their defense. I'm not so sure if any of them have the offense. It's the Ravens.
Saints could win the South.
Well, they can win the South, but they would lose to whoever they play in the wild card.
Yeah, no, I like this tier. Not bad. I think the Steelers, when you ignore the mistakes you made earlier in the power rankings, this is a good tier. When you see the teams you put behind this, it's a bad tier. But I'm just gonna eliminate that from my mind right now. Excuse me. I think that this is a good tier. The Saints, Steelers, super super solid defense. Their offense is actually absolutely terrible. Ravens, uh, this is the one team like doesn't really fit the criteria for me in defense wins wild cards. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, MVP Lamar. I don't know. And then the Browns, definitely a defense wins wild card team, especially with Nick Chubb going down. Super, super big loss for them. Even more pressure on Deshaun Watson, and he did not need any more pressure as it is. He's looking really, really bad, folks. You wish you stuck with Baker at this point. I think the Browns maybe could be a little bit lower, but hey, their defense could definitely carry them because they are super good defense.
I mean, if Deshaun and the Browns, if they don't have a winning record this year, unfortunately, it's gonna have to be the coaching staff that gets fired for it because they can't fire Deshaun. They have 140 something guaranteed
I
money to
know.
him.
I know.
So
He is,
no matter how bad he is, they have to keep him. They'll have to get a new coach instead.
yeah, he's scamming
Similar
them.
situation to Russ in Denver.
Yeah.
All right, tier four, contenders with questions. I have no doubt that these teams will probably be in the playoffs. There's still some questions. We got the Rams. I'm still just, last season,
Played a good
5
game.
wins, that lingers, but they almost beat the 49ers. I have to give them some credit. Then we got the Detroit Lions,
And this should
who
be the Seahawks next.
no, it's going to actually be the Bengals. The Bengals, because the Bengals are 0-2. I still think they're contenders, but the Bengals play the Rams on Monday Night Football. One of those, if the Rams win, the Bengals are 0-3, and they might be starting Jake Browning, former UW Husky. Jake Browning might make his first ever NFL start because Joe Burrow is injured. So
Jake
if the
Brown.
Bengals fall to 0-3, then they face a stretch where they pretty much have to win at least 3 or 4 in a row to get back into the conversation. I still think if they're 0-3, I would keep them in the playoffs, but once you're 0-3, then it starts to be real questions about how much are you going to contend. So I definitely have questions. I think overall the Bengals have the most talent. I think the Lions probably have the best shot at making a run out of these 3 teams just because we've seen them play really well against good teams like the Chiefs and like the Seahawks. Almost beating they beat a top they beat the number 2 team and then they almost beat the number 5 team. That's pretty impressive if you ask me. So
Yeah, I like this tier a lot. I really do. The Rams, they're definitely contenders in my eyes. They're maybe 1 or 2 pieces away from being legit shots, threats to, make a run at the Super Bowl, but they're a good team. The
they're
Lions,
so young.
the Lions beat the Chiefs, played a close game to Seattle, definitely could have won that. And then the Bengals, yeah, they are 0-2. Have they looked bad? Yes, but you have to look at their track record from last year. I still have belief in Joe Burrow, even though, yes, he might not play week 3. Um, but I like this. If you told me that the Rams and the Bengals would be on the same tier going into week 3, I would say you're crazy. But right now, yeah, this is the right spot for both of those teams.
Yeah, glad you agree on this. We go to tier 3, talented and hungry. These teams have all the talent and they are hungry to move up the rankings. I'm not going to do that just yet. We've got the Eagles. Why are the Eagles hungry? The Eagles are hungry because they just went to the Super Bowl and they're undefeated. And yet all the talk is the Cowboys, 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 Cowboys. The Eagles are over here like, what the heck? Where's our credit? We went to the Super Bowl. We're 2-0. We beat the Vikings, who were in the playoffs last year. The Cowboys just beat the
Yeah,
Jets with no quarterback. Like the Eagles, I think, probably are feeling a little disrespected right now, but they are hungry to get back into that top tier. The problem is they haven't looked great at times in their 2 wins. So that's
yeah,
why they're down here at number 7. Number 6 is the Seahawks. The
that's way too
Seahawks,
high. Way too.
I'm not sure why they have the red box because in my preseason they were number 4. So now they've been fallen to 6. I still think the Seahawks are that good of a team. And yes, obviously, you lost to the Rams, but the Rams are a top 10 team, and then you beat the Lions, who are also a top 10 team. So, maybe I'm just really overrating the Rams and the Lions and the Seahawks, but in my opinion, they're all 3 really good teams. And the Seahawks are hungry. Why are they hungry? Because 3 weeks ago, it was neck and neck between us and the 49ers about based off of who people were picking to win the division. And then we lost to the Rams, and now it's the Seahawks. They're average. Oh, who cares? Forget about the Seahawks. Nobody believes in Seattle, and that is when Pete Carroll does best. Is when nobody believes. And number 5, the Bills. The Bills are hungry. They are hungry because 2 years ago they got cheated out of the Super Bowl because the overtime rules. They lost a coin toss. And then last year they're the number 1 seed, and what happens? Their player almost dies. They have to forfeit the game, in which case they lose the number 1 seed, and then they go out in the playoffs in a blowout loss. The Bills are hungry to get back there and prove that it was not a fluke. They're talented, they're hungry, but they're not in my top four, but they are my number 5 team right now. They crushed the Raiders and they needed to.
Yeah, the Seahawks are not a better team than the Eagles. Just
Oh,
straight up.
I think they are. I think they are.
The Seahawks play the
Gino's
Seahawks.
been better. Gino's been better than Jalen Hurts this year.
Seahawks. Ooh, Geno
Yeah.
Smith looked really bad in the first game of the
Oh,
year.
Gino Smith looked like an MVP against the
He looked
Lions.
good. He looked good. That sack was pretty bad, but other than that, he looked really good.
And you have to remember the Seahawks are still getting reinforcements because we have our number one safety, our number one cornerback, and our both of our starting tackles are on the IL right now, but they're gonna be back in a few weeks.
At the end of the day, this is your power rankings. But if you told me the Seahawks play the Eagles right now, you think the
I
Seahawks are favored in Vegas?
Well, I have us beating the Eagles later on in the season,
Again,
so
your
yes.
power rankings. But I'm saying I think you know the answer to that
No,
question
well, Vegas doesn't favor us against anybody, so
because we're
obviously
not as good as you think. We're
we
top 10.
are. No,
We're
we are.
right. We're right. We're. I think we should be right ahead of where the Lions are in that tier, whatever that tier was.
And maybe I'm too high on Seattle, but I
Let me
don't
quickly
think I
talk about
am.
these three teams. Eagles, I like this. I think this is where they meant to be. They haven't looked great, but they are 2-0. So that's then at the end of the day, a win's a win. 2-0 in the NFL. They set themselves up good for the rest of the year. Seahawks 1-1. Falling 0-2 would be really, really bad. I have the Seahawks more around 10. The 12 through 8 range compared to Levi here, but Seahawks good team. Witherspoon got beat once, but other than that, looked really good. Charbonnet had a few really, really hard runs. He looked good. The defense overall, a lot of points scored against them, but I don't think they played as bad as what the scoreline indicated. I really don't. And
As soon as Jamal Adams is back and we don't have to play Julian Love anymore, our defense is going to be just fine because that's the only
hopefully,
guy who's
hopefully.
making mistakes.
I mean, Jamal's not great in coverage, but yeah, yeah. But and then you got the Bills, who tough loss against the Jets, especially when you look at what the Jets did versus the Cowboys this week. It makes the first week loss look
Yeah.
even worse because they played Zach Wilson. They played Zach Wilson. That's arguably they played Zach Wilson, who wasn't as prepared as he was for week 2 because he wasn't the starter. You have to beat the Jets in that situation, and they didn't. That's why I would probably drop the Bills. I would switch. I would drop the Bills a few spots, and I'd put the Dolphins where they are here. And it's crazy to say that because the Dolphins seem like an eternity ago we talked about them because we did. It seems like 15 spots ago the Dolphins were placed in these rankings because they are. It's just crazy to me. It's crazy the Dolphins aren't in talented and hungry because that's exactly what they are, folks. But the Eagles, talented and hungry for sure. Same thing for Seahawks, super talented. I think they're missing a few pieces. I'd move them down a tier, but to each their own. I don't hate it. And then the Bills, they're going to be the Bills. They look really good against the Raiders, but the week 1 loss it's tough. The tough thing on their resume for me. I can't get over that right now.
I'll just say this: when they beat the Dolphins in 2 weeks, then we'll know
That'll be
who's
a big
better.
game. That'll be a big game.
But if the Dolphins win, then I'll have to show my respect to Miami. All right. Tier 2, these are your number 1 contenders. This is not my Super Bowl, but this is the people that I think have the best shot of getting there. Cowboys, Jaguars. The Jaguars, they did lose to the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are a better team than them. The only concern I have about the Jaguars is Trevor Lawrence threw a bad pick, but I think he's going to be okay. I think he'll
Have
recover.
a touchdown.
Yeah, they didn't score a touchdown, but the Chiefs have a good defense. And then you get the Cowboys at number 4. I don't think they're the best team in the NFL, like some people are saying, because while their wins have been dominant, you just have to look a little bit at the quality of competition. It is the Giants and the Jets, and the Giants and the Jets are not that great. I have them at like 18 and 20. And this week the Cowboys play the number 32 ranked Cardinals. So the Cowboys could win this game 50-5. And people are going to say, oh, the Cowboys are the MVP, Super Bowl, Dak Prescott, Lombardi. And like, go, like, sure, like, it's not necessarily a bad take. But again, like, beating the
And then an
Cardinals by
easy start.
40 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to beat harder teams like the 49ers, like the Seahawks. So
Yeah.
I don't see you have to win a couple hard games before I give you the respect, which is why my Super Bowl, the Chiefs and the 49ers, the Chiefs just beat the number 3 team, the Jaguars. That's a huge win for them, even despite the loss to the Lions. They didn't have Kelsey to the Lions, and they still almost won that game. And then the 49ers, they beat 2 teams in the Steelers and who was their other win? Steelers and Rams, and both the Steelers and Rams are in my current top 15. So the 49ers have 2 solid wins on their resume, and the Chiefs have 1 solid win and a loss that I think is going to end up being okay for them. So this is my Super Bowl, still the same 2. I'm not backing off yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like, going back to the last tier, the Cowboys, I like where they are there. The Jaguars, I think, are a little too high. Trevor Lawrence hasn't shown me enough to this point, and Travis Etienne, meant to be their workhorse back, held under 50 yards. I'm not loving it there, but you know, they played a good team in the Kansas City Chiefs and they lost. And then we go to the next tier, and we got the Chiefs, who it concerns me that their offense hasn't looked great yet, but there's also been no Kelsey. So we need to see what happens when he comes back. Do you know the status on that, Levi?
Well, he played against the Jaguars. He didn't play very
Oh,
much.
he play against the Jaguars?
He came in and he actually caught a touchdown. He caught like 2 passes, but one of them was a touchdown. So
Oh, he did play against the.
yeah,
I thought he didn't. He did.
yeah, he did.
He wasn't 100% though, correct?
He was not 100%.
Okay. That's on me. Anyways, but yeah, so we'll see what
Well,
happens
too
when.
much time for Kelsey hanging out with Taylor Swift.
Yeah, there you go. But we'll see what happens when Kelsey's 100% and really being the Travis Kelsey we know. And then the Niners, I had them one. The Rams are a good team because I think we all know the Niners are a good team, and the Rams played them close. So
Yeah,
I don't think it's a knock on the Niners that they played a close game to the Rams as much as it's um uh a resume building thing for the Rams that they played close to the Niners, if that makes sense.
yeah, exactly. That's until the season has gone on for long enough. I'm judging teams' performances against other teams based off of what I initially thought they were going to be in the preseason. So maybe later on, if the Rams end up being terrible and the 49ers, and then you can say that's like a knock on the 49ers. But right now, I thought the Rams were going to be a borderline playoff team. Then they beat the Seahawks, which moved them up in my rankings. And then they almost beat the 49ers. So that only helps the Rams. It doesn't hurt the Niners because it's just like good job. You got a good win against a good team. That's kudos to you.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And they blew out the Steelers, who have a great defense. So
Yeah, no, these power rankings past, these last 15 teams or so, pretty good job, good work. But man, the 17 before that, it's tough. I think the NFL is really balanced right now. I really do. There's a
yeah,
lot of average to good teams, so it is hard. But there's a few rise to the crop. The cream rises to the top, and I think the Niners, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Jaguars, those are the right teams for this. But yeah, a lot of really solid teams in the NFL right now. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Would not be surprised if some good teams go 8-9 this year or 9-8 and maybe still have a chance to go to the playoffs. I think it'll be really muddled towards the middle.
yeah, it definitely will be. All right, well, with that, we're gonna wrap this one up. So make sure you guys comment, like, subscribe down below. Let me know, besides the Dolphins, because I know you guys are gonna have stuff to say about that. But besides the Dolphins, what else did I get wrong? What did I get right? Um, and yeah, let us know what you guys think. Drop your own power rankings down below. Would love
Yes,
to see
yes,
it. So
yes.
thank you guys for watching. This has been the NW Sportscast.
The Hawks.